about to begin. We want to welcome you to the Vampire and Devil Show. We want to welcome you to the Vampire and Devil Show. It's gonna be bloody fun. We're gonna kill everyone. Welcome to the Vampire and Devil Show. With lots of blood and lots of guts. Two horror fanatics and rock and roll nuts. Welcome to the Vampire and Devil Show.
Devil, my friend. Oh, yeah. I think if there's anybody who would know hot things, it's you.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's only right that you let our beloved Fangs know what they can order now, courtesy of Coney Island.
Oh, yeah, man. We're in the kitchen. You know it gets hot in the kitchen. And what else better for your finger foods, for your tacos, for your victims that you may be eating? Maybe some sauce. And you should get it from the sauce boss. Coney Island sauce. Oh, yeah. Get some of that good stuff. Oh, yeah. You like to sprinkle it on anything. You could sprinkle it on your fingers. Sprinkle it on your toes. Sprinkle it on your hose. Anything you want to sprinkle goes.
Absolutely. We have partnered with Coney Island Saucery. Aaron is fantastic. We really appreciate all the love he's given to the show, and we're very, very pleased and honored to be a part of him. So he's got 4 sauces out of various heat levels to enjoy on all your various foods, but also for anybody who is already following his socials, our socials, or is about to be, newly announced partnership with Slayer.
Oh yeah.
Coney Island
Burning to fire.
Oh yeah, Coney Island Saucery does have a Slayer brand hot sauce coming out very, very soon. And so make sure that you check that out for all your various levels of spice. This is Vampire and the Devil, Coney Island Saucery. Horns up. Fangs out.
Devil, sleigh bells ring, are you listening? But in this lane, there's blood and fire and venom and death. As we decorate our black Christmas trees, my friend, I think we, what do you say we get into the Christmas spirit? Or the Christmas Devil? We can call this particular episode the Vampire and Krampus Show.
Hell yeah. It's that time to sharpen up your axes and hope you're not on that naughty list, because Santa or Satan or maybe even both of them might come after you this year.
Absolutely, man, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a fun one today, man, as we talk a little bit about, like, you know, a little bit of potential wrestling, a little bit of stripper abuse, and a whole lot of blood that's going to get shed, and a little bit of punk rock on top of that as well, man, as we talk about Santa's sleigh. We're going to put that up against Christmas, Bloody Christmas. And it's definitely going to be a fun one, though, my friend. So Krampus, the Christmas devil today, or in this case, of course, my dear beloved devil. Why don't we jump into Santa's sleigh, man, since that one came out first. It'll just kind of be a fun one to start us off with. And personally, this is one that I always have on my Christmas, watch list, not only every season, but I also enjoy watching this movie various times throughout the year, just kind of when I'm in the mood. But Christmas, Bloody Christmas also added itself as well, because that movie was a whole lot of fun, which we'll get into in a little bit. But, Santa's Sleigh, starring Bill Goldberg, Jewish Bill Goldberg, as a murderous Santa Claus.
Yeah, that's the great thing about this movie, other than, the campiness of this, obviously the very, tongue-in-cheek horror in the movie, we'll get into a little bit of the plot and stuff like that. But I think it's great, yeah, you have Bill Goldberg, a Jewish person. In the very beginning of this movie, there is a bunch of established actors that are all eating Christmas dinner, and all these actors and actresses are all of Jewish descent too. So I thought that was just kind of funny. Like, it's this very beginning, it's a very, screw Hanukkah, we're just gonna do Christmas, kind of thing. And it has some good big names, you know what I mean? It's got, you got Chris Kattan's in there, you got Fran Drescher in this. I mean, like we were talking a little bit off thing. I swear the budget of this movie literally was in the first 5 minutes of this movie, because they have a lot of these, maybe not A actors anymore, but at one time in their prime, these were A actors.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's so, it's so funny when it comes to that movie for sure. Because I mean, yeah, again, you said it, Chris Kattan, Fran Drescher, all these people that were taken out, Rebecca Gayheart, which is funny because she was actually just at Monster Mania when we were up there recently doing an urban legend thing. But all of these people just gets wiped out by Santa Claus right off the bat in the first 5 minutes of this movie. And it's hilarious too, because they're talking about adultery. They're talking about financial status and all this absolutely crazy stuff. They're a little abusive, they're a little abusive to a puppy, which, Mrs. Vamp is not going to be too fond of, but it's really a hilarious opening scene. The kills that they do are also very unique. You got, Fran Drescher gets basically almost kind of Molotov, to her face and then drowned in eggnog. You've got the one guy who has a turkey leg impaled through the back of his throat. Rebecca just simply faints and impales herself on a fireplace poker. I mean, it's I got that combination of just nice, fun kills, flirty kills for this type of movie like this, and mixed with definitely some camp and weirdness and stuff. Especially Chris's, where he's trying to act all tough and basically just gets donkey kicked through a glass display, and that was a wrap on him. And you're just kind of really? Just that? So it's definitely funny when it comes to that. But personally, I've always loved the concept of this movie, which I'll get into for a second, where it's basically the speed version of this is that Santa was never nice. Santa was never about, goodwill towards men, giving gifts and making everybody feel good. Basically, Santa was always a dick. He was always the son of Satan. And it was based around, he's the other Immaculate Conception. There's the Virgin Mary giving birth to Jesus, and there's, the wife of Satan giving birth to Santa. The only two Immaculate Conceptions ever, and I like the way they tied that in. But basically, Santa's never nice. He's always been an asshole, and he lost a bet to an angel where the bet was, look, for the next 1,000 years, you have to be good. You have to give presents. You have to make people feel good. And you have to do all these great things for the next 1,000 years. And that's where the movie takes place, is the end of those 1,000 years where Santa can go back to doing what he does best, which is just killing everybody.
Yeah, it's got, like he said, it's got Bill Goldberg in it. So, there's going to be some high flying action. There's going to be some spears, and there's going to be some jackknives, and there's definitely going to be, some crazy one-liners in this movie. The only thing we were missing from Bill Goldberg was some sparks. Like his entrance that he used to come out to in WCW with the giant sparks. That would have been kind of funny to all of a sudden somewhere out of nowhere these sparks just start flying on him or something like that, and be like, where the hell does that even came from? But
it just comes right down.
Yeah, but yeah, I love it. You know what I mean? It starts off with the intro animation to go into the title of the movie with some quote unquote good music that's playing in the background of it. It's such a crazy concept, and I do like it that it is Santa was always Satan's spawn, and like you said, he just finally now gets to do whatever Santa wants to do, and now everybody's on the naughty list.
Yep, no, 100%, and it's cool, it's based around this grandfather, his grandson, and his best friend, love interest kind of a thing, where it's basically besties that, of course, finally get to the point where they're like, hey, you realize I'm into you and we need to be a thing, kind of a thing, which is always kind of funny. But No, I just think it's cool. You know, he comes back to town looking for revenge on the angel that, you know, forced him to be nice for all these years. And just like you said, man, there's great one-liners. Like the funny thing is too, you've got, you know, Nicholas, the main kid character, and his friend Mary, who work in like a Jewish like bakery diner kind of like sandwich thing. And so that's kind of how you're introduced to them as they're finishing off work. Their boss is like, look, it's, you know, it's Christmas Eve. Get out of here. You shouldn't be working. Go, go, go. But it kicks off that by them being basically called sluts and assholes by this little old lady that is upset about her $4 sandwich costing like 50 cents more than it should. And she's just this like horrific person, and she leaves. And you know, that also brings on probably our first nice one-liner, based off what you were saying about some nice, you know, interesting music that was playing too. But we got a nice dose of bitch, move out the way, get out the way, as you know, she's driving slowly in the snow, can't see over the steering wheel, and Santa's driving his sleigh behind her and not being able to move quickly.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta love that. And then, like you said, you know, with the iconic kills, you know, there's a lot of cool imagery in it. Like I said, in this movie, a lot of cool iconic kills. I mean, I love the fact that he, you know, kills the Jewish shop owner basically with like a menorah, and he's basically impaled to the wall of the shop. And you know, and then, you know, like I said, yeah, I mean, the one liners throughout this whole entire movie is just funny. You know, he is like, at one point he's like, I'm Santa, not fucking Dracula. And
Right when they're shining a flashlight in his face.
yeah, and it's just like all these is like crazy thing. And then, like, you know, like I said, I mean, at one point he's driving a Zamboni down the you know, like that. And like you said, you know, you know, you have that little bit of like Goldberg, like you said, him
Yeah.
being a huge wrestler and, you know, big name in the thing. You know, they're gonna put little ties in that. And you know, one of the other liners that he puts in there, he goes, "Who's next?" Which was always a huge thing that Bill Goldberg always used to say. Every time he would whoop someone's ass, he'd always say like, "Who's next?" So you know, I like the fact, you know, like I said, I mean, I mean, Bill Goldberg, you know, whether or not you liked him as a wrestler or not, he was always a fun wrestler. He was always, you know, he's not the best technical wrestler in the world. He's, you know, he is a big brute. He can move around. His whole persona is basically just fear, you know,
Yeah.
force just beating the shit out of you. And like you said, he's not, you know, he wasn't the greatest on the mic. You know, he wasn't cutting the best promos. So that's why when you watch this movie, you gotta take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, Bill Goldberg is not the greatest actor in the entire world, but he you can tell he has fun while he's making this movie, and that's why I love about it, because it's just like, it's just so over the top. And like you said, I love the fact that it's this, you know, big huge Jewish guy going around killing everybody, you know, killing everybody, calling himself Santa.
Absolutely. And I got to take a moment to talk about like one of my favorite like scenes in this movie. And it actually starts off where there's a scene where, you know, people are in church, and, you know, the minister is going on his, you know, he's just saying his piece, his typical, you know, preacher talk that they do when they're in church. And, you know, they're passing around the collection plate, and he's like, you know, make sure that you're taking care of the homeless, make sure that you're taking care of the needy. Like, you know, I see coins in that basket, don't be giving them coins, you know, give the needy bills, you know, make them have a nice Christmas, make sure you get some bills in there. And, you know, while you can tell by the way it's delivered that you're kind of like, okay, this is kind of weird or whatever, it's funny because immediately you learn that dude's just a sleaze, because you see the collection plate moving around, and you can see that one of the you know, dollars or whatever has got like something in like red Sharpie like written on it. And then it fast forwards to one of the places that Santa stops at his sleigh at is a strip club. And he takes out the bouncer guy, and, you know, the hell deer, as they refer to it, which is basically like a giant, like, you know, buffalo meets reindeer thing, you know, eats the valet alive. But it goes into the strip club where you see the pastor guy in there with, you know, giving the strippers the money from the collection plate, because you can see the dollar with the red Sharpie all over it, which I think is hilarious. But anyway, I love that scene because it's just so campy. It's so ridiculous too, because he kills people in these pretty epic ways, to be honest. He electrocutes one of them by like tossing a metal pole to him and kicks the pole up into a light socket and just electrocutes the guy to death, and does all this like crazy stuff. But it's the little things. Like at one point there's a girl sitting on a trapeze, and he jumps up and he grabs the trapeze to swing on it, and so his face is like right between her legs, and he jumps down and he just looks up at her and kind of gives her like a wink with like a smirk. But I also love the fact that the pole that I had mentioned is actually the stripper pole that he rips out of the stage. But what was so great is he goes to grab it and he stops and he's like, ew. And he picks up a Windex bottle and sprays it down and cleans it, and then rips it off and starts using it as a weapon, and then basically takes a piece of coal and blows on it and throws it into the strip club and burns it down to the ground. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. It's so hilarious, but it's just my favorite scene in this, just like path of destruction. He takes out the police station and he takes out all the cops, and basically he's hunting down Nicholas, Mary, and Nicholas's uncle, who turns out that he's the same angel that beat him in the bet to make him be nice. He had given up his mortality because of the love of a mortal woman. So that was why he was able to do that. And it basically turns into a cat and mouse game, leading up to, as they say, needing to get to midnight, which is where the Christmas Eve ends, is once you get midnight, because then it's, the day after Christmas. So it's a matter of trying to get him to lose his powers by midnight and just kind of stay alive.
Yeah. It gets pretty crazy towards the end of the movie. Like I said, it's just him going after the kids. I love the fact that the angel and the devil, they played, or Santa played what basically is like a shuttleboard, basically, or some kind
curling.
Or curling, that's what it is. Yeah, curling, like the Olympic sports. And I'm just like, really? That's the, you always see like, these movies where it's like, the devil and this person's gonna fight each other over like a banjo playing, like in The Devil Goes Down to Georgia, or it's this or that, or rock off, or something really, really crazy, like a huge sporting event or something like that. No, they're gonna settle the world and settle the score with curling. That's the most exciting sport there ever was. Not.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's one of those things where as we get to the end of the movie, it does set itself up for a sequel, which never happened. It's not likely going to happen. Personally, I don't think it's needed. We've had this conversation a lot. Look, I personally love this movie, and I'll get into why I love it so much shortly. But look, I would not hate a sequel to this movie because I just love it, and I think it would be a lot of fun. But I don't need it. I love it as a standalone movie. Like I said, it lives in my holiday movies, and I just think it's totally awesome. But yeah, it gets to the end where basically, while trying to run over the kids with a Zamboni and then realizing that, yeah, he has subsequently lost his powers, he kind of retreats. And, Mary and Nicholas go, so you would think, to live happily ever after and stuff, as they were able to get the best of Santa Claus. And, ultimately, Nicholas's grandfather basically does go back to heaven because he is actually a casualty in this movie, which is another great one-liner because he gets run over by Santa's sleigh. And of course, that great liner, but in this case, Grandpa got run over by a reindeer. It's just like, oh my God, every pun is used in this movie, and it's so great. But it basically fast forwards to Santa sitting at the airport, looking very Bill Goldberg. Like, this is the one time of the movie where there's just completely no denying that Bill Goldberg is playing this character. Because yes, he's still got the hair, he's still got the Santa beard, but he's wearing like a biker jacket and vest. He's got like an actual, if anybody who is a fan of like WWF, when he went over to them and the logo that he used, he's wearing one of his own Goldberg like beanies in the supermarket. I mean, in the airport. And it's also really funny too, because there was always like, we're both hockey guys, and when he's checking his luggage, you know, they're like, is this all you're checking in, you know, Mr. Satan? And he's like, it's Shatan. And I was always a big fan of Miroslav Shatan as a kid, simply because I loved his name, because it was spelled Satan, and it was fantastic. But that's basically just how the movie ends. You know, Nicholas and Mary go off to do Nicholas and Mary things, and Goldberg is sitting there just waiting for his flight. And it goes to credits.
Yeah. It is a really odd, like, ending. It's just like, okay. I mean, it's I mean, it's on point. You know what I mean? It's it's just basically him like, okay, now I lost. Now it's time for me to just shit. Now I can just go back and just the off season. Let me go and chill and do that. And like you said, it is very Goldberg. You know what I mean? It's biker Goldberg. You know what I mean? Which is typical like thing. I kind of feel like they were like, hey, we need to figure out a new ending for this movie. Can you just come in and just all I have is my biker gear? That's good enough. We can do that.
It is anticlimactic. It is bizarre, because like, even though he's defeated and look, he has to fly back to the North Pole because the one thing that we didn't cover is one of the big reasons for them getting Santa where they had him and stalling enough for him to lose his power is Mary's parents are big hunters and they blew up his reindeer with like a rocket launcher. More absurdity. But anyway, that is the thing that is very funny about the ending of this movie anyways, because again, it's very like, oh, well, these are just the clothes I wore to set today. The Santa suit is in the cleaners now or whatever. So it's like, yeah, like you said, that's good enough. You would have think he would have still been dressed in some type of Santa-esque type thing. Even if it wasn't a Santa suit, you would think it would be like red and or something like that. Nah, man, it's just like denim and leather, as the old saying was. So it's a weird anticlimactic, but it's fun, and it stays pretty much with the theme of this movie. So you can't really knock it. You can kind of look at it and kind of roll your eyes with a smirk when you see it, but it's not technically incorrect just because of the way this movie's set up. It's just kind of bizarre. But let's talk a little bit about the obituaries, my friend, when it comes to this movie. I'll start it off, man. Like I said, dude, I love this movie. I always have. This movie seared its way into my collection immediately and has always been in my top 3 Christmas movies, every year, along with, Nightmare Before Christmas and A Christmas Story, because my mom brought me up on that movie. I love Santa's Sleigh. I'm a big fan of it. Like I said, I wouldn't hate a sequel somewhere down the line. If not tomorrow, that would rock. I don't need it. I love it as a campy standalone movie. It brings me a lot of joy. I think it's super duper fun. It does its thing. It's actually it's a pretty well shot movie as far as like the visual appeal to it. It's, the camera, it's clean. It looks good. It's pretty sharp. Even like you said, where we still feel that the dominance of the budget is in the first like 10 minutes of the movie because of the actors that they cast for that. But I think it's fun. I really enjoy it. It's actually kind of cool, too, that the movie's only about like an hour and 10 to hour and 15 minutes. So that's actually something I like about it, where it doesn't fall into that traditional category of hour and a half to 2 hours like a traditional movie. I like the fact that you can kind of always make time for this movie, even if you don't have a lot of time. But I do rate this movie really high. Not crazy high because, there's so much camp. There's so much, for real, about the movie. But I really do find it to be a solid movie that can be consistently enjoyed. So I do give it a 7.5.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree with you on a lot of those points. Even when we discuss this movie and stuff like that, I definitely don't put this movie in a high regard as much as you do.
Sure.
I think it's a fun. I think it's always been a fun movie, and I remember like when you decided to pick this movie, I'm like, oh yeah, I keep forgetting that about this movie. It's one of those ones that like I enjoy. I just to me, I just thought it was like a little bit too over the top at points and stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, I mean, it was just in the line of like, at the time, like all these wrestlers like transitioning into movie stars. And then you had some of them that were in decent movies that were good, and you had some ones that were kind of bad, and you have ones that were bad who kind of go into starting to get a little bit better in movies. And yeah, it was one of those ones where it was like, oh god, like what WWF, WWE, or WCW star is going to be in the next movie now all the time. So it was like one of those ones where it's like, really, Jesus. But like I said, I mean, it's always fun. It's a fun movie. I like the fact that, I like the storyline, with the whole, he's Satan's, Santa is Satan's kid and stuff like that. So I thought, like I said, it's fun. I just wouldn't put it nearly as in high regards as you, but
Sure.
I mean, for me, I'd still give it a good solid 7.
Okay. No sweat, man. So it falls into a little bit of a gray area when it comes to the final ranking that we don't really go with. We always, stick with our 0s and our 5s. So what do you think as far as like the swing? I kind of want to swing it to 7.5, to be honest, because I do think the quality of the cast, while they're just there for bloodshed, does give it a bit of a reason to go higher. Plus, I do like, again, and this is for me, I'm a sucker for backstory, so I enjoy that. Even though it was like a claymation style, which I still think is pretty cool, I liked the way they kind of told the story of why Santa's the way he is, why he had to do this, and why he's back for revenge. So I kind of enjoyed the backstory of Santa part of it, and I do think that the quality of the opening kill cast is worth a swing. But how do you look at it, bro?
I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of torn in between, because I think it's like these are one of those movies that, like, if you're a horror fan, you probably may have seen this and you may have not seen it. You might have just Googled up, like, you were watching other Christmas horror movies and you're like, oh, what Christmas horror movies were there? Like I said, I don't think you would really know about this movie unless you were like a huge, like, wrestling fan. Because, like, obviously that was a big pull of it, you know what I mean? So it's like,
That's
if
fair.
you didn't know, if you didn't really know. So, like, on your casual horror person probably isn't gonna know this movie as much, because like you said, it wasn't really, it wasn't, it was a big movie, like, as far as budget probably wise, but like I said, all that budget kind of went for here and there, and for some of the namesake, and like I said, Bill Goldberg, his name was still at that time was still really big, so of course, they're gonna pay him some. But like I said, to me, like, I feel like it's gonna be one of those ones where it's, you can give the watchability. Yeah, it's fun. Like I said, it's a fun movie. For me personally, I could probably give or take it watching it all the time, but like I said, it definitely has that you need to watch it. I think everybody should watch it because it's just a fun movie. But yeah, I feel like, in the horror realm of Christmas movies, I don't think people are really gonna know this movie as much unless, like I said, unless you're into those ones. So I'm kind of torn, because it's like, yeah, the 7.5 would be good, but I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, it's your movie, so I'll let you take the call on that one.
No, it's cool, man. No, honestly, I think that's fair. You do make a lot of valid points, and we do talk regularly about the common populace, and again, wrestling fans are passionate, and there's a lot of them out there. But again, of course, there's a lot of wrestling fans out there, but there's also a hell of a lot of horror movie fans out there. And you do make a good point when it does come to the common populace, where I do think the movie comes up probably a little bit more, somewhat regularly enough, because again, you do get those wrestling fans, like for myself, for example, that's part of, like, that's part of alternative culture, where they're going to be fans of, like, those type of people, like the Wyatt Six and Bray Wyatt, and like the House of Black in AEW, or even the Hardy Boys, or like Judgment Day and Rhea Ripley and stuff like that. But I do think you make a valid point in the niche market appeal of this movie specifically, as opposed to, the overall appeal as a Christmas horror movie. So I really think that's a valid point, man. And honestly, it's totally cool, man. I appreciate you being down for which way I take it, but I really think that the points you made are valid and worth acknowledging, man. So what do you say, man? What do you say we go with 7? Does that sound cool?
Yeah, I think 7's a good plateau for it.
Sounds good, man. So that's the way it's going to be, Fangs and Infernos. We are giving Santa's Sleigh with Bill Goldberg as Santa Claus a 7.0 on the obituaries. As we right now transition it right back to our beloved Krampus, the Christmas devil, as he definitely ups the bloodshed in his movie as we talk right now about Christmas, Bloody Christmas.
I mean, like we said, with the Santa sleigh, yeah, there's a little bit of blood, there's a little bit of thing. Yeah, this movie is the complete opposite. This is basically like just strictly a Christmas bloody movie. You know what I mean? It's really cool. It was directed by a guy named Joe Begos. He made these cool movies. He made this Almost Human movie that was really, really cool. He made this one called VFW, which was like these veterans that are in this bar and there's like zombies and crazy shit. That was pretty nuts. So his movies, are going to be insane to begin with, and it's just a cool movie. I mean, it kind of reminds me a lot of like those Christmas horror movies in the past. You can kind of see a little bit of like Chucky a little bit in this movie. You can see a little bit of Gremlins. I mean, it basically, the plot of this movie is like the commercialism. They have this robot this robot that can do all this crazy shit that they can make it. And they're trying to make it into wartime and doing all this kind of stuff like that. And they end up making it into this company buys it and basically makes it into a Santa, the Santa animation. But they find out that a lot of these robots have had glitches and bad things that have happened. And that's basically what the movie starts off with. These kids are working in a holiday store and they're like, oh shit, man, you got one of those Santas. Didn't they repossessed all those? And they're like, oh yeah, they just haven't came and got ours or yet or whatever like that. And they're gonna be, and just like any in any good horror movie, you're gonna have some sex and some debauchery and some drinking, and that's basically what it starts off with. It's just these young kids, this doing stuff, trying to get past the holiday season. They're all working retail, so I feel exactly as much as is that our jobs during the retail should pay for our alcohol consumption, because if it wasn't for all the annoying customers, we wouldn't be drinking nearly as much as we want to. So I feel like this, but yeah, I love it. Basically this robot Santa comes alive and just starts wreaking havoc.
Absolutely, man, for sure. Yeah, the kids work like retail at like a music store, like a vinyl store, which is very cool. And it's an overall cool soundtrack that they tied in with this movie too, because it's very punk rock. Like, that you can definitely get that vibe. But no, it's cool because the robot Santa has this, like, for me, it has this like Ed 209 from RoboCop, where especially the scene when he, they're using him as like a, they're, what is it, when they're showing him off basically to get like green lit for the for the program or project, and he just wastes this guy because there was whatever glitch made it not realize that he was disarmed and he was just a civilian, and he just gets completely blown away. But he also reminds me as the other half, when you were talking about the people at the store being like, oh wow, it's cool you have one of these, I thought they were all discontinued, is if anybody's ever seen the Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd movie, Stallone's like, the villain of that movie basically steals this old war machine android from like a pawn shop and wires it to be like his bodyguard. And so it definitely has this like, discontinued, bodyguard dread machine thing mixed with Ed 209 malfunction from RoboCop, which definitely, like you said, brother, definitely makes for a bloody good time. And it's an interesting movie though too, because like I was saying before when you and I were casually talking about the movie, like it's a very like guerrilla feel for me movie. Like it's shot well, everybody knows that I am not a big, guerrilla movie fan. Like I don't really like watching a movie through like another person's video camera. I'm just not a big fan of those type of movies. They don't really do it for me. But point of view, I think, is how they're referred to. But anyway, this movie's definitely, it's a dark, grainy feel, but it has that guerrilla feel to it, where it's like, you're looking through the point of view of the robot at times, but you're still basically watching it as a movie. You know, where are the victims going? What are they doing as they start getting knocked off one by one, and in definitely pretty epic fashions. I mean, it's a crazy movie as this Santa Claus is just hunting them down one by one to eventually, you know, be chasing down the final girl.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, this definitely a movie is if you're squeamish, if you don't like a lot of blood, if you don't like a lot of sex and you don't like a lot of profanity, this movie is not for you. This movie has been quoted as having 487 uses of the word fuck and profanity movie in this movie. So it's definitely like, and it's to a point where yeah, I'm like really 487, but yeah, there's sometimes in this movie where it's just like it literally is just throwing every curse word a million times. You're like it to a point where it's like it's just being abundant. Now you're just saying naughty words because it's a Santa movie, so you have to be on the naughty list. But
Because
yeah, I mean,
you've already secured your R rating, so you might as well just go with it.
yeah, but yeah, I like it. I mean, I love it. I mean, this movie is crazy. Like I said, he's going after these kids that kind of were all working in the shop and stuff like that. And he goes into this house and just basically like murders the shit out of this freaking family and stuff like that. And it's just so brutal, man. It's just like he cuts the axe through the door, almost very Shining like. And it's just yeah, it's just like all of a sudden, they're over at the next door and they're like, oh shit, man, that robot just fucking that Santa robot just killed the shit out of people. And then it's just yeah, it just goes crazy, and then it's cops come and they don't believe anybody and they're trying to arrest the people because yeah, who's gonna believe that there's a killer, Santa robot going around? But then he ends up fucking the shit out of them and yeah, this movie definitely didn't shy away from like the blood and the guts and the gore, you know what I mean? And it doesn't really, as far as a plot wise, there's really not much of a plot. I mean, it's less of a plot than RoboCop, it's literally just a robot freaking Santa Claus that is just going on a murder spree and killing everybody and just chopping people up and just devastating. And one time they take like part of his face off and it's just crazy. But yeah, it's one of those movies. Yeah, you're not watching this for the plot. You're not watching it for anything. You're watching it literally to see a Santa Claus go around and murder a whole bunch of people.
No, for sure, because they go into one particular scene too. They kind of go into taboo character,
Yeah.
taboo category where it's like that's kind of an even in horror that's kind of an unwritten no, which is children, and
Yeah.
they were not afraid to put that child in harm's way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I like it because like I said, when you come to this director, he's like he's allowed to do it, and that's the things like even though this movie kind of it was very low budget, it's very low key. It did have a small theater run because I don't know if we mentioned, but when we went to go see, we were in the movie theaters, and I think we were going to see something around the holiday time, and we saw the poster for this movie and was like, oh shit, that's pretty cool. I think a lot of it had to do with them being able to get Shutter to kind of promote the movie, so they got a little bit of like a theater run for it. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely with these movies like we've talked about a million times with the Terrifiers and stuff like that, when you don't have a huge Hollywood backed producers and all this Hollywood money into it, you could pretty much do whatever you want to do. And
Yeah.
that's what I like about it. Like you said, you can do things that you're not theoretically supposed to do in horror movies, and you can do it in this movie. The one thing that I even put on my notes as joking around, which I never quite understood, is okay. I'm just gonna make a point on here now for any future filmmakers out there. When you're simulating people having sex and you have a guy going down on a girl, unless the dude is Gene Simmons, he is not going to be able to reach anything whatsoever as far away as you put their people's face in it. I don't know what you got to do. I mean, granted, yes, I'm not saying you need to physically make a porn movie and have them do stuff, but you got to get two actors that are, preferably, depending on what the scene is. It could be a male or male, female, male, female, 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 whatever they are. Just two actors that are, very comfortable with each other, so they can actually put their faces in places. It's same thing with them whenever anybody's having sex. They're always like super far away from each other, and it's like, yeah, that position's not gonna work. So that's my only really beef in this movie was, yeah, I mean, I liked it. I love the fact that these two were just like, screw it, we're gonna have sex in this Christmas shop, and and they were very very kinky and dominatrixy, and it kind of, that being said, with him being tied up and stuff like that, it made for a cool kill, because it was like, well, yep, that guy's gonna die.
Yeah. And it's hilarious too, because like the whole movie, like they're cool, they're co-workers, like they're cool with each other and whatnot. It also did make me laugh when they got to that scene though too, because like the whole movie, they're going out, bar hopping, drinking, and he's basically putting it out on Front Street that he would like to get a piece, but not even in that typical sleazy way where you usually have that guy that is just the horn dog and he's just going to keep pushing and pressing and whatever. And it's more on that line of like, look, like we know each other, we're friends, we're like really comfortable and stuff. It's the holidays. Neither one of us are doing shit or tied down in any way, no pun intended, but she was kind of playing coy the whole time, where it was kind of like, look, we're going to go out and drink and I'm going to get all fucked up because it's Christmas and I'm over it and I'm off work and I don't have any plans. Even though I'd like to have plans, I don't have any, but you are not getting any tonight. So I'm just letting you know that from the start, you are spending the night with your hand tonight, and that's the way it's going to be. And then of course, as the night moves on, the sensibilities become less important, and it's like, you know what, a motherfucker's got needs, a bitch has needs, you know what, whatever, fuck it, let's just go ahead and do it. And yeah, makes for some cool kills. And she does survive as a final girl when they finally get this machine to stop. But looks like the movie ends where it definitely looks like she's got a one-way ticket to the nut house though.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing too you were talking about. Yeah, and if any movie where they're like, oh my God, I'm never gonna sleep with you, they're gonna sleep with them at that one point. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, it's just, yeah, the cat and mouse. But yeah, I mean, like I said, yeah, it's just, the whole movie is just like, there's really, it's weird because it's one of those movies that you can explain, but you really can't explain. It's just literally just robotic Santa Claus killing and destroying a whole bunch of shit and just murdering people in crazy ways that you haven't seen, and using things to stop from being killed, and doing this and doing that. And yeah, it's just, it like basically takes that, Silent Night, Deadly Night movie, with the killer Santa Claus, and it just like ups it. Like, I mean, I'm assuming that's what they came up with this movie. They're like, dude, I really like the Silent Night, Deadly Night movie. Oh yeah, man, that movie was pretty cool. Killer Santa Claus. It was a deranged psycho killer that dressed up in a Santa Claus outfit and goes and kills. Wouldn't it be cool if we'd made a movie that's basically the same, but we make it a robot so that it can do even more crazier and fucked up shit? Yeah, that sounds like a plan to me.
Almost like Frankenstein, where they took the killer's brain and clipped it into a robot. Or if you ever saw that old Simpsons, like Treehouse of Horror, when they put Homer's brain in this giant robot that was controlled by Mr. Burns and stuff. And yeah, it definitely has that very like, how can we up Silent Night, Deadly Night and make it a little bit more like indestructible and stuff, which is definitely what they did on that, because my God, did that robot put up a fight, which I'll get into a little bit more in detail when it's my time in the obituaries. But let's jump to the obituaries, my friend. How do you rate Christmas, Bloody Christmas?
I mean, for me, like I said, I mean, it was a movie that kind of, like I said, we didn't really know about it. I didn't, all of a sudden we seen this cool poster. And I mean, and that in itself is probably the really drawing factor of this movie, is that poster is probably one of the coolest posters you're ever gonna see. It's very pleasing to the eye. It
Yeah.
draws you in because it's got the the Christmas colors, the red and the green and they're all really bright. And then you have the axe and the Santa Claus and robot face to it, where I just think it's just a cool looking poster that like it kind of draws you in. And then like you said, I mean, granted, yeah, I mean any movie about a killing robotic Santa Claus, it's not going to win any Academy Awards. It's not, it's not. I mean, you're going into this movie knowing that you're going to see something campy and something bloody, and maybe have a little bit of fun, and that's basically So to me, even though I didn't go see this in theaters, I felt like if I went to theaters and seen this, I would have been completely satisfied. You got your money's worth for what you knew you were gonna see. And I feel like it was in that year where there were so many of these like newer movies that are coming out that were same themed. You had that Violent Night that came out, around the same time. So you have these like, these Christmas movies. And I feel like this one is gonna be kind of a classic. It may not be a classic now, but I feel like eventually it's going to get enough people, especially with it being on streaming, and people can see on Shutter and the AMC and all that kind of stuff like that. So I kind of feel like it's one of those movies that like maybe not right now, it's not going to be the biggest movie in the world, but I feel like in time it's going to be something really cool. And it's just like I said, I thought it was just a fun overall movie. Like I said, was it the best? Was it the best movie in the world? No. I mean, like I said, I mean, plot wise, it didn't really need a plot. I mean, there's literally, it had exactly what I want in a horror movie, which is nudity, lots of blood, and lots of swearing, and some gore and some crazy shit that you haven't seen in a horror movie. And that, I mean, that checked all the boxes. There's a lot of stuff that they you can see that they had little parts of horror movies that may have like been in their brains or stuff like that, or they paying homage to these movies. But you can definitely tell it. I mean, it's a standalone movie. I mean, there's no other movie that's like it. Yes, it has similarities to other movies, but in a whole, it's not copycatting anybody. Which, like I said, in a world where everybody wants to do remakes, reboots, or make movies that kind of similar to other movies, I mean, it's fresh to see movies like this and like Terrifier and all that kind of stuff. So for me, again, it's not winning any awards, but to me, it's a solid 7.
Cool. No, absolutely, man. I'm definitely with you on that. That's right about the same score that I was going to give it. The one thing though that I have to address, because it drove me fucking batty watching the movie, as much as I did enjoy it, the 25 fucking endings of this movie were pissing me off, dude. And I really can't lie. Again, I enjoyed it so much. And it's one thing, again, we know this is a military grade weapon robot kind of thing. So, of course, you're not going to take it down with one shot, maybe one explosion or one, machine gun riddled thing or whatever. I really, though, did feel that they dragged out the death of this robot just ad nauseum. And I'm watching this thing going like, I almost felt like her in that movie where I'm like, you've got to be kidding. He's still alive. He's still coming. And again, we understand that military grade stuff is on a way higher level than anything else. And it's going to take a lot to take that stuff down. But I really did feel that they went above and beyond to drag it out to where it was almost like zombie style, or like the Black Knight from Monty Python, where it's just every limb is gone. It's just a torso. Its head has been cut off, but it's attached by a wire. And I'm embellishing a little bit, but they really did go over the top when it came to. I really think that they should have stopped it earlier, because it did feel very just nauseating, that I was just like, God, still? What, the movie's not done yet? Where the fuck are the credits? Anyway, that was really my only major gripe, because again, I agree with you. I like the fact that it definitely is a standalone. I can't pair it with anything. I do feel that same way about Santa's Sleigh, to be honest. I do feel that it doesn't have like an equal as far as that style, but there still are other horror-ish type movies that deal with Santa as a still biblical or mythical creature, as kind of an evil character. They've touched on that a little bit more, not quite as directly as, no, he's Satan's child, and he's never been good. He lost a bet. So it's got a certain amount of standalone as well. But as far as like just a unstoppable force, using a wrestling reference, for the sake of this, the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. Like, there definitely isn't. There's no counterpart to Christmas Bloody Christmas, where, like I said, I feel the same way about Santa's Sleigh, but there's enough other stuff kind of around. Definitely not killer robot Santa Claus. So I'm definitely with you on that. So as much for the sake of checking boxes and blood and gore and sex and all that fun stuff, I really would have loved to have shot it up there, but I just can't. I can't give it a high mark because the ending was just beating me down. It was almost like a horror Lord of the Rings. So I do think 7 is quality when it comes to that for sure. Now that does pose a follow-up because our two movies are tied. And, we don't go into huge drawn out, duke it out battles. We just kind of put it out there as it should be. But I will be honest with you, my friend, I do feel that this one is a really easier decision, in your favor, for the fact that, again, this is definitely a common populist horror blood fest movie where Santa's Sleigh does have the niche market and a lot of enjoyability behind it, but horror fans will become Christmas Bloody Christmas fans, I think, in the big picture, finding out about it, especially with Shudder, as opposed to Santa's Sleigh, which does get love on Tubi and all that other stuff. So it's definitely out there. But I do think this one is solidly more subsidized as a quality horror movie specifically. So I do lean, while it's a tie at 7, I do lean to victory for Christmas Bloody Christmas. But what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely would agree with you on that one. I mean, I think, like you said, I mean, all the points for both of the movies and stuff like that. I think if your average, horror movie buff, horror movie guy is gonna go and pick out a Christmas movie, his girlfriend's like, hey, pick out a Christmas horror movie to watch. He's probably gonna go with Bloody Christmas versus Santa Sleigh for just because the fact that one. I mean, not saying that's a bad thing, but Santa Sleigh is a little bit older of a film. It came out almost 20 years ago, where that one's going to be a little bit harder to find. Even when you Google, you know what I mean? Like I said, maybe this person doesn't know much about the Christmas horror genre, so you just go Christmas horror movies. Yes, is Santa Sleigh on that list? Yes, it is, but it's further down on that list than A Christmas Bloody Christmas, and not necessarily because whoever made that list thinks that, Christmas Bloody Christmas is a better movie than Santa Sleigh. It's just because it's a newer movie. So it's got a little bit more of that popularity as far as searchable wise. So I think a little bit of that, like when it comes to that, I think that's what puts it as an edge. I think both movies are both watchable. You know what I mean? They both bring a different aspect to it. One is more comedy with a little bit of horror in it, and the other one's more horror with a little bit of comedy in it. So it's like, but I feel like, like I said, I agree. I think both movies are both solid, but I do believe that the Christmas Bloody Christmas is one that, it's been 20 years since Santa Sleigh came out, and it's gained some notoriety, but it's where it is now. The next 5 years, 5 to 10 years, it's not going to get any bigger than where it is now.
Yeah.
Just a plot where Christmas Bloody Christmas is at a plateau where it is now, but I feel like it's one of those movies that eventually will get higher up on the rankings as far as people, loving a Christmas horror movie. So yeah, I definitely think that, that I think Christmas Bloody Christmas will have that slight edge.
Yeah, man. Sounds good to me, and that's the way it's going to be. And also, when we posted this on all of our on the V&D socials, letting the Fangs and Infernos know that we were going to be pitting these movies up against each other and talking about these movies, our friend and alumnus of the show, Chris O'Brockie, instantly commented on it, saying, "Oh, dude, Christmas Bloody Christmas, it's already a mainstay in my holiday movies." So, there's somebody who's also in the field. Not only is he just a fan of horror movies, because you guys all have seen his interview and stuff like that, and we've talked to him. He's right there as an example of a guy that saw the movie and is straight up like, no, this is now in my collection. It's now part of, how I celebrate the holiday season. And, so we definitely have firsthand feedback that Christmas Bloody Christmas definitely has the option and the ability to carry on and really build, where I definitely agree. Love it, dear to my heart, and it's not going anywhere. Santa Sleigh has pretty much topped out. I can see I don't think it's ever going to drop, but, it'll have its little spikes here and there, but it's going to pretty much just kind of ride the plateau, kind of ride the horizon. So that's the way it's going to be, Fangs and Infernos and our beloved ghouls. Victory to the devil when it comes to this one. We have taken Christmas Bloody Christmas. We have taken Santa's Sleigh. They've duked it out to an even 7, but to everything that we've discussed and to the ability to grow and to the ability to be more bloody, it is going to be a victory for Christmas Bloody Christmas over Santa's Sleigh. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you guys, and always a lot of love and support and appreciation goes out to our partners and our sponsors. Horns up, Fangs out.
Devil, my friend, I think it's time that we spill the tea. Brutalities. Vampire and Devil Podcast couldn't be more excited, more humbled to let you all know that we have partnered with very dear friends of ours for a long time in Brutalities. And there's so much great stuff, so many flavors, so much to enjoy, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about it. Isn't that right there, my friend?
Oh yeah, we like it hot. Of course the Inferno likes it hot. Do you like the hot tea? Well, you might as well get some Brutality. Yeah, horror movies, puns, rock and roll, Brutality's got it all.
Absolutely. When it comes to the vampire, you know that he's going to absolutely gravitate towards that Nosferatu or that Nosferatu brew. Absolutely a favorite of mine. And we got to show a little bit love to, by all means, the biggest franchise in horror right now. That would be Terrifier. So Brutalities has brought you Terrifier. But that's just from the vampire. The devil has some favorites of his own.
Oh yeah, do you like the movie Pumpkinhead? Well, how about a little pumpkin bread for your throat holes? And like I said, with the rock and roll fans and the horror fans, Wednesday 13 fans, do you like Wednesday 13 and tea? How about a couple of those? With the Summertime Suicide and a couple other ones too. So if you like Wednesday 13 and you like the tea and you like the Brutalities, go to the website.
Absolutely. And so, of course, we like to look out for those that look out for us. We love you, Fangs. We love you, Infernos. But as a courtesy from Brutalities to be bestowed on you, we have that Vampire and Devil coupon code, don't we, my friend?
Oh, yeah. You want to save a little dough, little cheddar, maybe buy some more shit? Go on the line, Brutalities, type in Vampire and Devil, and you get 10% off your order. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So it's getting into the chilly weather. People need to warm their bones. They need to warm what little skin they may or may not have. But Brutalities is the way to get it done. So that's the way it's going to be because Vampire and Devil said so. Horns up, Fangs out for Brutalities.
Hey, what's up? It's time for more 80s horror comedies with Crazy Devil here. Yes, we're gonna talk about ghoulies. Ooh, the ghoulies. Do you like campy satanic powers that make no fucking sense? Do you like little small creatures that come out and look gruesome, whoosome, but look horrible too? Do you like a bunch of crazy shit in your movies? Then you should check out Ghoulies. Check out the first one, then check out some other ones, then check out them all, because the Ghoulies are the ghouliest of them all. Check it out.
On a show like this, being the creatures that we are, I think it's safe to say that you and I know a little something about the occult.
Oh yeah, we like all that scary stuff. Stuff for the devil, stuff for the evilness, stuff that's got a bunch of witches.
Absolutely. And we're going to go this way, that way. Which way are we going to end up? So we're going to have a little discussion. This showdown's going to be a lot of fun, man. I think this one is definitely going to be very interesting to the Fangs, very interesting to the Infernos, with a little bit of skin or a lot of bit of skin that we get to talk about. But my dearest devil, we're going to pit the witch up against Lords of Salem.
Oh
And
yeah.
And why don't we jump into that? We'll talk a little bit about The Witch to kick it off. It's a New England-based movie. The ever-present Black Phillip in that movie from 2016.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I figured, I was like, what kind of occult movies can we kind of do? And there's all kinds of different occults. You can kind of go with like the Wicker Man and like a lot of that kind of stuff. Midsummer with that folky kind of occultness too. But we're like, you know what? Let's just go straight for the devil, man. The devil's always the prime evil man in these kind of movies, and even like both of them, it's both of these movies with the witch and Lords of Salem. They're very different because one's you know old times, and Lords of Salem's more newer times,
Yeah.
but they're very similar story too, to a certain extent. You know what I mean? And it's just cool. I mean, like they're both cool movies. They're both detailed about the occult and about witches and that black magic and Satan and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, but completely different in sort of in different ways too. So it's such cool. It's gonna be a cool little contrast of topics today. But yeah, we started off with The Witch, like you said. I mean, it's a I really dug this movie when it came out. You know what I mean? I know some people kind of shit on it a little bit here and there, but I mean overall I thought it was a fun movie. I mean, I love the fact that it was filmed in the old times, stuff like that. The dialect might not have been exactly exactly how the dialect would have been at that time in that in that region of Massachusetts and that area and stuff like that. But it's still, you can tell that when they directed this and wrote this, that these people did have that history and knew that a little bit about that history and brought some of that history of people being accused of witchcraft, or people just kind of getting tired of all the witchcraft, which is basically kind of starts this movie where it's just these people were just tired of living in this town with all these huge rules, and they have to do this, and they're religious, and throughout, but apparently they have little things that they didn't go along with the main people in this village, so they just kind of went off and did their own thing.
Yeah, for sure. Like I like this movie a lot, Devil, and I agree with everything that you said. Like I honestly really wasn't a fan of the dialect. I'll get more into that like, at the end of our conversation because it plays into my closing points. But I didn't really love that per se, but I liked the concept of this movie. I've always loved the screenplay of this movie. It's also a Robert Eggers movie. You and I saw Northman together. And, of course, that I couldn't be any more hype for, as of the recording of this episode, the upcoming Nosferatu movie that he's doing. So, I couldn't be more hype about that. But I really love, like, Robert's take on things. He's got that dark, occulty feel to it. Even taking just a brief moment when it comes to like, the Northmen, like, it was that very just old school Viking, had that dark feel to it, animal lusting as these, this child was becoming a man. So he definitely likes his like transformation style movies, deep history, dark rooted kind of stuff. He's got a great like brain for that. But I did love the fact that it is a much more non-kid friendly more dark version to a certain degree of Hocus Pocus, where it doesn't have that same kind of obviously like full play out of like the Sanderson sisters being the focal point, kind of like the center of the universe and everything else branches out. But it still has, it's almost kind of like the opening scene of that movie if they focused it more on the family and the little girl, as opposed to in Hocus, you know, she wanders off, she's scooped up by the witches, she's killed, and then that leads to the rest of the story. This is a whole lot more based around that family, almost kind of an Amityville horror style design with seeing things, wondering if things are really there. You know, how does Black Phillip play into this as the goat that's kind of looking over the commune? But something that's a lot more about the family focused and driven.
Yeah, yeah, that was the one thing I liked about this movie too, because like just like anybody who's fanatic about anything, whether or not you believe in your faith in believing in God or believing in the devil, believing in Satan, it was one of those ones where like the movie kind of played off like you weren't 100% sure what was going on, and it could be just this overzealous, religious family that are just so devoted that they're kind of seeing things for how they want to see them, or hearing things and feeling things the way that it is. And it kind of gets like that until you get into like the meat of the movie, where you're like, oh crap, maybe there is something, in the woods. They're talking about, not being able to go into the woods because there's a witch in the woods. And like, it's just little things like in this movie. Like the little kids in this movie are creepy as shit.
They
Like
really are.
they're just like, they're singing the Philip, Black Phillip song, and they're just like super like, oh my God, she's a witch, she did all this stuff. They're just really these little two kids are really kind of evil when you get to, into the movie where, they meet their demise. You're kind of like, fuck it, they deserved it, the little pricks. You don't usually want to see kids die, especially little kids like that. But you're kind of like, yeah, these kids kind of deserved it. But yeah, I like the way that they just, they handled the religious side, and they handle the satanic side on it. And it's one to know, that fact that, they handled the way, satanic stuff and all the Satan stuff, kind of like where you kind of don't see it, but it's there, and it's kind of a presence until, you kind of feel like he's really there. And I like the way that they handled it. They didn't go over to like worship Satan. They didn't go over like too crazy with it, like being like, a devil with horns and
Yeah,
crazy pitchfork and stuff like that. To a point that, this movie was so well done that the Satanic Temple actually like can, 100% condone this movie. And they played like when the movie came out, they played it at the temple and stuff like that. So it was like well regarded, as far as like, not being too cheek and tongue when it comes to the, cause sometimes when you do satanic stuff, you can just make it seem like it's too
yeah,
over the top, where this was like well done with that realms of like the Satan, with the Satan and the satanic parts of it.
for sure. And that's also just part of the stigma that comes along with that too, is when people look at like Satanists, they look at the Satanic Temple, things like that, they kind of automatically go into that, just pure sacrificing virgins, drinking blood, covering people in blood, like just kind of campy orgies kind of thing. They don't look at it, different ways. I mean, and it's cool too, honestly. I like the fact that the Satanic Temple, endorses this movie. Ourselves as members of like the Satanic Temple, it's pretty cool because they've got their own documentary, which is excellent. But it is also very cool that not only are they always very upfront with the education that comes with being a member of that and the education that they put forward, they still understand that there's a certain amount of camp and fun to the whole like satanic orgy thing. But they also get it when it comes to this movie, where it's like, yeah, just like you said, it's not always about like, the horns and the devil specifically and stuff like that. I mean, there's only one you, bro, often duplicated, but I like the fact that they did focus on, okay, we don't want that traditional imagery that might automatically get an eye roll because it's like, oh, of course that would be another thing. This is based around, the goat symbol, which is, of course, Baphomet, the traditional pentagram style. It's always a associated logo and image when it comes to Satanism. But I like the fact that they used it as the animal specifically instead of just maybe instead of having like a goat in the background, but a devil as the demonic presence specifically. And I really like the idea that they focused it around this goat. He had a name, he had a persona, and he's the one that was just causing the havoc.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, and you get into the little bit of stuff too, and it's like it's crazy with this movie too, because it's like the one part where it's they get into the the craziness of the movie and stuff like that, and it's like one thing that I loved about this movie because you don't ever really see it ever is the part where the witch is killing the little kid in the movie and uses the blood and the goop and all that stuff to basically make a lube, which is for her broom, and that's what makes the broom fly. You
Yeah.
never get to see that, so it's kind of cool, like it where it was like, oh, okay, that would kind of make sense because they were saying this, and then like you were saying, with the with the orgies, yeah, they have that towards the end. You see the coven of witches, and of course, the coven of witches, witches were always tend to be one with nature, so they usually when you see a coven of witches and they're doing anything that's ritualistical or any kind of spiritual thing, or they're doing anything, yeah, they tend to be naked, and yeah, it's always not always a perfect sight sometimes when you see some of these witches. They're
Yeah.
not all they're not all they're not all sexy like bewitched you know
Not all Samantha.
bewitched women. Yeah, they all look like Samantha.
No, man, for sure. And that's just kind of the way it is with a lot of that kind of stuff. But I also still like the idea of, you've got the coven, you've got the celebration. And that also still ties back in with Philip as well, as he takes on a human form. So it is kind of one of those things where, again, you know, orgies have their place. It's part of the stylistic design of a lot of these things. But again, while they still focused it on Black Phillip, and like I said, I loved the fact that they didn't make it so demonic visually right that second, but the fact that it transforms into that human form though, and you still get that, oh well, it is the devil. It is still the ability to be a shapeshifter, and taking on this form to kind of be able to watch from a distance or watch up close, but maybe still sort of stay incognito, as opposed to the end where, you pull the curtain back and it's like, see, I am a thing. I was always here. I knew, and I had my finger on the pulse the whole time, and you didn't even know it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing I like about this movie too. It's like you have the main girl. She's living in this religion. She's the older sister. She got the lot of younger kids. She's getting blamed for a lot of the stuff. The mom is always like basically accusing her of all this stuff all the time. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you kind of feel bad for her. I kind of feel. I mean, they don't really delve into it, but I kind of feel like the father was sort of molesting her or some kind of sexual thing between them and the daughter too, where it was like, you had this kind of like feeling like that. And like I said, it's all the stuff that she is the devout Christian throughout this movie, and then she just keeps getting doing this, or why did you do this, and you did this because you're Satan, and you did this because you're evil, and eventually it just gets to the point where bad things happen. They keep blaming her about all these bad things. And then it gets towards, like you said, when it gets towards the end where you find out that all this bad stuff was from Black Phillip and the goat, and then that was actually Satan himself and kind of verged into a man. He gives her that option to like, basically like, do you want to come to this side, and come into the darkness and join, your other fallen sisters that are in the woods, or do you kind of want to be like your mother and father who are dead now? And it's like, I think that all that past trauma that she was going through kind of just basically pushed her towards that evil side. Where
Yeah.
like, it was kind of like, you can be it kind of had like a, moral to the story was like, yeah, you can be a devout Christian or you can be a devout religious person, whatever religion you're being, but when you start forcing it so much on people, sometimes that's going to have good effects because sometimes you can just get your children to believe and do that stuff like that, but sometimes it's going to push them away from it, and that's what kind of it is. I feel like that was kind of the moral of the story was like, that Satan was in the ear, but he really was just kind of sitting back and just watching things happen and just
Yeah.
knew that her parents were those over religious, overzealous people that they would probably drive her to his side anyway.
No, 100%, man. And that ultimately was basically the deal where, it's like, look, Satan can take these forms and you can have the traditional stories of, well, Satan will do anything to get people to come to the dark side. Yeah, there's plenty of documented stuff when it comes to that way of thinking. But then there's also, it's like, I might be the casual hand that guides you, but I don't really get involved until I need to get involved. And it is that same thing that you were just saying, because it's like that just in real life, where, if you've got, you know, there was like that old saying, like, a parent should, like, push a child away with like the left while bringing them closer with the right, kind of a thing, where it's like you're their parent, you're allowed to educate them, teach them things, maybe guide them on the path that you think is best for them, but you still got to let them make their own decisions, like, let them get into mischief, let them scuff their knees, let them, get into some trouble and learn from certain mistakes. It's like touching the stove, when you're told it's hot, but you're going to do it anyway. And then it's like, hey, what did you learn? But yeah, so it's that same type of thing where, Black Phillip is sitting back. Hey, sorry, not sorry. I kind of told you so. But hey, don't look at me. I was around, but you fucked it up. I just benefited from it. And that was kind of ultimately the thing when it came to that. But it's a cool movie, man. I've always liked it. It grew on me a little bit after my first time watching it, which is very similar to our next movie in Lords of Salem, which we'll get into shortly. But I I always loved the screenplay of this movie. I always thought that it was just really cool, a great idea, a great concept, and very well written. And I'll go into my other details on the thing when it's my turn to talk about the obituaries, which we're at right now. But your pick, your movie, my friend. Why don't you start us off, man? How do you look at The Witch?
Yeah, I was the same way too when I first saw this movie. I wouldn't go as far as saying I hated it. I thought it was an interesting take, and I was like, eh. I mean, it was cool. It was good enough. I was like, okay, cool. And then like I watched it again, and then watched it a couple other times, just like periodically it was on. And the more and more I watched it, the more and more I liked it. Because like I said, it's one of those ones that's like it's like a lot of the films that we've talked about before, where it's a very like high educational movie where it's very philosophical, very like highbrow, it's very intelligent. It's an intelligent horror film where it's just not your normal take on witches and your normal take on that religious life of the 1600s 1700s or anything like that, where it's like you normally it has a little bit of those tropes, and it's got a couple of things, and like you've always had movies with the goats, but I think Black Phillip was just super cool looking. He was like a very unique black goat that I heard like they've had like so much trouble with that goat on the set that like it almost made it impossible to make that movie because like they just didn't want to do what the goat was supposed to do half the time. And but yeah, I mean, like I said, once I started watching this movie and started getting into it a lot more, yeah, I liked it a lot more. Like I know what you're gonna talk about in your obituaries, but yeah, yes, there is a little bit of that dialect that I thought that kind of made it a little bit less, into that world. But it wasn't horrible, horrible. I mean, to me, I would rather it be the way that it is than to oversell it, where you're like hardcore overselling that Boston accent or the Irish accent or anything like that, where it's just like so blatantly obvious that like, you got a bunch of like, Anglo-Saxon white people just all of a sudden going like higher, higher, and start talking in weird languages, and you're like, yeah, they don't sound like that. So I mean, like I said, but I don't think that took away enough of the movie. And like I said, I always liked it. Like I love the fact that, like I said, when every time I've watched it, I've seen newer things, and I'm like, oh my god, this is pretty sweet. Though I didn't notice this before. I didn't notice that before, and I was like, yeah, like I said, to me, I've always liked this movie. Like I said, it's one of those movies where I mentioned earlier that typically when you see little kids being killed, you're like, boo, but those little kids deserved it. They were pain in the asses. They were pain in the asses to Philip, chasing them around and just doing bad things and telling on their sister, saying that she's a witch, and then eventually she becomes a witch. So. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, it's not like I said, it's not one of those movies where it's. I think it's watchable enough. Like it's one of those ones that people can watch over and over again. It's definitely on the realm of one of those movies where it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. You know what I mean? Even people who are into that occult movies, or it's the reason why I picked this movie. I think it's just a cool movie. I think it's got a cool atmosphere. It's got a cool story. It's got cool actors. You know what I mean? And it's just a fun movie. It's yeah, like I said, it's not gonna win everybody over, but overall, I think it's a fun movie, and for me, I'm gonna give it a 7.
Nice, man. No, I'm definitely with you on that. Like story wise, I definitely wanted to go a little bit, story wise, I rank it higher than I will overall because again, I'm right down the pipe with you. Like I like the acting, love the director, and everything about it. Yeah, like for me personally, like the accent, maybe it's also from being from that area and stuff like that as well. But like, I didn't hate the accents. I didn't hate the speech, like the vocal acting, but it did break some of my fantasy, especially the first time that I saw it, because it was that same kind of thing. Because I'm already dealing with the fact that this is already an incredibly unique concept. So I'm like, oh, I really want to like this movie. I feel like it's got something to it. But oh my God, I don't want them to talk anymore. So my initial watching the movie, I remember leaving the theater, and I think I was like really hard on them when I left. Like again, loved the script, loved the screenplay of the movie from top to bottom, and I loved the dark story around the characters. But I was just like, oh my God, their vocal acting was so atrocious. But then as I circled back around, because again, liking witches the way I do, liking the occult the way that we do. I mean, of course, still when the movie came out, I still had to add it to my collection, have it on my shelf. So even before I had access to like some of the streaming services and stuff like that shows a lot of these movies, I was able to watch it at my leisure whenever I was just kind of in the mood to check it out, give it another shot. Very similar to our next movie, but it's the same kind of thing for me when it came to that. It's like it's a high ranking movie in the concept and the design. It's just the execution takes just a few points off of that, but nothing that I find to be overly detrimental. But I'm with you on that one, man. I think 7 is a great one for The Witch, and I agree with you on that, man. So 7 it will be for The Witch. And as we bring it into its counterpart, its competitor in The Lords of Salem, dude, this is going to be an interesting one to break down in general because, like, look, we love Rob Zombie regardless. Like, for me, that guy can do no wrong. I look forward to his movies every time, no matter what they are. And I just think he's absolutely fantastic. So the funny thing about this movie is like when it comes to the Lords of Salem, Now, this movie is definitely out there. It is incredibly unique, and it is unusual to say the least, because you get so much of that Rob Zombie style to it. But this is the first movie that like heavily dives into the occult, because you've got, House of a Thousand Corpses, which is much more of that Texas Chainsaw Massacre style with a little bit of the occult mixed in because of Dr. Satan. You've got, Devil's Rejects, which we've talked about, which is much more of that bandits on the run, kill everybody in your path type of design. You've got his interpretations of the Halloween movies, and then, you've got his, El Super Beasto kind of fun little cartoon movie, as well as, things like 31 and movies like 31, which is more of that, like, trapped in the house, playing, at the mercy of the game of a madman. That's just the speed version of all that stuff. But Lords of Salem is so much more into that true occult when it comes to Salem as well. It was filmed in Salem. You and I have both been to Heidi Hawthorne's apartment, in Salem. And it's got a little bit of that, trick or treat feel to it. Not Sam, but, Sammy Kerr style trick or treat, where it bases around Sherry Moon Zombie's character as a DJ, as a popular DJ in the area with her, colleagues that work with her. And then this music kind of shows up to her that not only teach her about the history of herself being a Hawthorne, and again, incredibly famous hotel in Salem, the Hawthorne Hotel, along with the idea of where are you from, what's your history, all the way down to, how much of yourself can you give as well. Very similar to the Black Phillip story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you add into like the cast in this movie is insane too. You got obviously you got Sherry Moon in it. You got Jeff Daniels, Philip Daniels in it as the DJ with Ken Foree as a DJ with him. But then you've got like Meg Foster in this. You got Dee Wallace in this movie. You got one of our Lord and Almighty Patricia Quinn from the Rocky Horror in this movie. So it's such a cool concept and such a cool cast of these characters. And I remember when this movie came out, I remember people going and seeing it, and people that I knew were like, "Oh, this was horrible. Oh, this." They talk so much shit on this movie, but they love like movies like, um, El Topo and and Holy Mountain and these kind of like occult movies that are like these pinnacle movies like this, and they're just like praising this movie, and I'm like, yeah, this movie was basically kind of a homage. You can definitely tell that Rob Zombie was inspired by a lot of those directors and those movies. So it's like, so you're gonna like those movies, but then you're not gonna like this, and it's and then eventually they come back around when that movie when Lords of Salem started getting a little bit bigger of a track, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I love Lords of Salem." I'm like, "Yeah, you didn't love it when it first came out,
Right.
but yeah, but for me, yeah, I love it. There's sort of some funny like when you came to like watching this movie again and with the notes. I love to do the cheek and tonguey notes, and one of the things that I commented on this movie was yes, in the beginning of the movie you have some witches like we did in The Witch, and they're in the coven and they're doing their naked dances, and yes, these women were definitely not women that we wanted to see naked. Very what your traditional kind of witch was supposed to look like, kind of ugly and fugly, and
Yeah.
things not being in proportion. And then you jump right into that scene where it's like, oh god, the devil does not want to see any of this, to Sherry Moon laying in the bed butt naked. And I was like, yeah, there's a little bit of nudity that the devil is definitely behind.
Right. Literally or figuratively.
Yeah. To me, it's like and it's funny though, because we talk about Sherry Moon, and she always talks about like not wanting to be, she never wants to be an actress. That's why she never really is in any other movies other than one movie that eventually we'll talk about, next year when we do W. Hooper's,
Yep.
stuff. We'll talk about, her being in a movie, but primarily her movies are always been Rob movies. And I'm always like, I don't mind the fact that she is in all of his movies. Like shit, right? You have a girlfriend or a wife or whatever that likes this kind of stuff that's fun. Why not put her in it? But that to me, I always kind of felt weird with, if she doesn't really want to be an actress, then why does she need to be in main roles all the time? And
Right.
I get that's one of the bitches about Lords of Salem, and with her having this more of like a lead role, that people didn't like her acting nearly in this movie versus like Devil's Rejects, where she's a little bit more of that serial killer kind of funny, where she was just like, kind of just your normal everyday person. But I thought she played a, pretty good role in this movie.
I thought she did a pretty good job in this movie, but I will agree with, to a certain degree, with the general populace on this, because that is a way that I felt as well. Because don't get me wrong, Meg Foster, Jeff Daniel Phillips, Ken Foree, like she really did have those strong counterparts around her. But with her being the star of this movie, being such a focal point, again, like you had addressed, with her only kind of casually wanting to be an actress in music videos and because it's her husband's movie and stuff like that, but she doesn't fancy herself an actress and stuff like that. I always did feel that her shortcomings stood a little stronger in this movie than in the other movies, because she didn't have that amazing cast around her to kind of protect her when it came to a lot of that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not taking cheap shots at Jeff Daniel Phillips. I'm damn sure not taking cheap shots at Ken Foree, or Megan Foster. Hell no. But you again got to take into account when they're not in the DJ booth with, Ken and Jeff there, when she's by herself figuring out her history, hearing this music, wondering, and the witches are kind of watching and kind of like floating around her, so to speak. She's for the forefront of most scenes of this movie. And I do think that, her inexperience as a lead actress does stand out on this movie. There's also a lot of like fun things that I like about this movie. We both like John Five, and he was the main guy that did the score of this movie. And also a little fun Easter egg is when you get to like the witches coven kind of throne sequence, John Five is one of like the executioners on the side of the throne, and Piggy D is the other.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. Like, I guess they had more scenes with the two of them at one point, but that was literally the only like 2 seconds, and they're behind like these costumes and stuff like that, so you don't really see them or whatever like that. But yeah, I like that. I like that. Like I said, they play this record, and this record is it's it's like you're talking about, like, with the Trick or Treat, where it's the demonic music, but that's more like rock and roll. I like the fact that they made this music in this for the movie basically something from like the old ancient times, where it's just drums and it's just, like flutes and stuff like that, stuff that you could just naturally play,
Absolutely.
without having all this stuff like that. So I like it. And it's like, it is kind of, in this movie, when they play it, it mesmerizes a lot of the women, and basically kind of like, hypnotizes these women who were descendants of, the witch hunters and stuff like that. So all these women that are kind of like just getting droned. But then again, when you start listening to that music and it's just over and over again, it does start to kind of mess with your head a little bit, because it's just like that like bass thumping and stuff like that. I thought it was really, really cool in a cool way. And then, you have her apartment, you have the witch devil kind of trying to enticing her into the room that nobody's at. And you get all these really, really cool imagery. And then, it gets into that, where she's starting to get more and more intense, and think these witches are trying to get her more and more into power, and she starts getting, you know, enticed by the devil, and then all of a sudden she has sex with the devil, but the devil she has a sex with is really this weird entity thing.
Yeah,
And then and then it starts getting into the movie where a lot of people start dropping off to it. It gets really weird really fast
it really.
towards that middle-ish end, and then the ending you're just like, what the fuck did we just watch? Like, it's one of those ones.
It also comes to like an abrupt halt. I think
Yeah,
one of the reasons why that caught everybody so off guard is like literally it was kind of like the end of The Sopranos. It just kind of was like black.
yeah. But it was just, but like everything before that, man, I love it. Like I said, and it's like Inigo, one of the actors that we were talking about too, was like Lisa Marie. She hadn't been in a movie for like 11, like 10, 11 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was cool that he like kind of brought her, got her to come back in this movie. And like I said, that was the cool thing about, us going to conventions and stuff all the time. I got to meet before this movie even came out. Like they just announced the movie, and I, I made, the Miss Devil a poster, and it was Lords of Salem that I found this cool little Lords of Salem logo he put, and I added a little bit extra to it, made this cool poster because, obviously Dee Wallace was at this convention we went to, Lisa Marie was there, Meg Foster was there, so it was like, shit, why not get some of these, some of these people who were in that movie, and we showed it to Lisa Marie, and she was like, wait, how do you have this poster? This movie hasn't even came out yet. Like we just got done filming it or something like that. We haven't even. I was like, oh yeah. I mean, he added the one little thing, and I added a little bit extra to it, made it myself. And she's like, oh my god, this is cool as hell. Can I take a picture of this and send it to Rob? I'm like, fuck yeah, you can send it to Rob as long as he doesn't send me no like, cease and desist order. I was like, hell yeah, hell yeah. So I was always curious on if I ever get a chance to talk to Rob, ask him about that because like I said, because I've had a couple of people stuff like that, but it was really really cool. Like I said, I thought this was a cool movie. Like I said, it's one of those ones to me like you're gonna have Rob Zombie snobs. You're gonna have ones that go like, "Oh yeah, I love, House of Thousand Corpses and Devil Rejects, and I like this movie." But then when you start talking about like some of these other ones like Lords of Salem or like Rob Zombie's the Halloween 2 or something like that, then people go, yeah, I don't like it. Why he's got to do this?" And that's like to me, it's like hey man, like yeah, granted, is Lords of Salem my favorite of all the Rob Zombie movies? No. Is it my least favorite? Probably not. I mean, I would put it down in the probably bottom five, but that's only because I like so many of his other movies. It has
Right.
nothing to do with how bad this movie is. I like this movie. I'm one of those idiots that like say, yeah, fuck all you people, and like you don't like it, then just don't watch it. Like you don't
Right.
get it. It's to the point where it's like one of those ones that goes over their head. It's like it's like when we're talking about The Witch. It's one of those movies where like yeah, he could have made a regular traditional movie, like, cult movie, satanic movie. And he kind of did. It starts off pretty much like a basic movie. I mean, not something we've seen, but, something with the tales of that. And then, Rob's going to be Rob. It's like M. Night, he's going to throw something in there. And it's like, why not use this platform to put some weird, crazy shit that you can't even explain, like after you've seen this movie 100 times?
Right. No, 100%. And that's the thing too, is like this movie, one of the things I like about this movie, and again, at first I was kind of like, this is a weird ass movie, man. But it's so all over the place, but it's just that it's that psychedelic 70s Rob Zombie style. And it is also funny that you say that part two, because I agree, because you get those Rob Zombie snobs out there where I'm just like, you know, I remember back before you and I found each other, like in the old days when like MySpace was still a thing and all that kind of stuff. I remember seeing House of a Thousand Corpses in the theater, and I had been so jazzed up for like years leading up to that. I was like, I can't wait for this movie. It's going to be fucking awesome. I'm really, really excited. And I watched that movie, and of course I was like, yeah, it's tied in with this. Very 70s psychedelic, but I also knew that was Rob's history. He loves those movies. He's such a fan. So of course it would implement it with like that kind of Texas Chainsaw Massacre feel to it. I was in it to win it with that movie from the time I started watching it to the time the credits rolled, and I still loved it. And I was always hearing that there would always be these conversations. What's, your least favorite horror movie? So many, 90% of the people that I would hear talk about this, they always seem to list off House of a Thousand Corpses. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? That movie's awesome. They're like, that movie was so weird. It was so bizarre. It didn't make any sense. And it was so like real crazily colorful. But I love Rob's music. I'm like, then you pay no attention to anything. Because if you love Rob's music, you watch those music videos, what the fuck are you doing while you're watching these movies? Because they match, like these music videos, because they match. But and then of course, more movies he does, more popular he continues to be. Everything's I love it. I love the Firefly trilogy. Everything's great. It's like, oh no, shut up and go away. But it is weird, and like that's the thing. I think similar to like where with the lingo and the language of The Witch is a little bit tricky for me in that one. I love weird, man, but like that was just a very oddly shot design sequence, for the end of that movie. And it almost kind of felt like if you took a movie like The Boondock Saints or like Pulp Fiction, like a movie that's got a bunch of little scenes in different places in different orders, but then they tie back together and stuff. But if you just take one of those two movies and just squish it, to a much smaller, 20-minute scene, it almost kind of felt like this, where it was just like pew, 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 up, down, up, down. And then all of a sudden, like I said, just fade to black. And then written and directed by Rob Zombie, Lords of Salem. And you're just kind of like, what, huh? Where's the rest of you? Like, so I thought that was really, really interesting to say the least. But it definitely, hurts the fantasy. It does break the fantasy a little bit because you just start getting confused. But anyway, bro, I still love that movie. It's still awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the obituaries as well when it comes to this, and then see how we stand on everything. So when it comes to that movie, again, first and foremost, I'm a Rob Zombie fan. I always am. I love this movie to death, which is actually much closer to like my legit backstory of where I grew up from. So that's something I always really love with that. But I just love Rob's brain when it comes to these movies, and the fact that he's not afraid to go there. I love the fact that John 5 did his first real score ever by doing this movie, and he'd never really done that kind of stuff before. And, and I love the fact that Rob is not only so great at just getting iconic casts together, but he's just able to bring in people that you don't really ever get to see or haven't seen, like Leslie Easterbrook, all the way up to Lisa Marie. I think it's so cool that he's able to talk to these actors and actresses that are either kind of cool with where they're at or just need to find a project that strikes them enough. And it's very cool that like a guy like Rob Zombie with a brain that he does is able to find a way to get these people, interested and enticed and wanting to be in this project, which I think is very cool. And it speaks volumes to him, call it his negotiation skills, call it his passion for the project. But I just think it's super duper cool. But overall, I really do love this movie. Again, similar to The Witch, it's, it's going to be popular to some, weird and just unknown and uncertain to others. But I think it's cool. I think it's a lot of fun to watch. I think that The Witch is a little bit more nichey with when it really hits you to want to watch that. But I do find it has a slightly, more story-driven design. But I just love the uniqueness of Lords of Salem. I find it actually hits my weird bone a little bit more often. And, and for me, I do rank this one actually a little bit higher, dude. I do give this movie a 7.5.
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with it too. With what you're saying. I think it's cool. I love the fact that he, like you said, he filmed this, a lot in Salem, like in places that we got to go and visit and see. I love the fact that, it is kind of a, like I said, it is kind of a home story because Rob being from Massachusetts and not that far away from Salem. So it was kind of like a love letter to, to like, basically his childhood and stuff like that. Loving that, that I love the fact that it was, around the fall time for Salem, which is like the best time to film a movie in Salem is that time of year. Not only just because of the history and the richness, but just like the colorization and stuff like that. You have the fall and all that kind of stuff like that. Just works perfectly. Probably not the best thing sometimes to film because at night because it's probably cold as shit for some of those shoots depending on what time of year he did it and stuff like that. But yeah, it's like, but I love it. I love the fact that you just take you just anything that you put into that. Like when we talk about these movies that are filmed in Salem, like this movie, you got the Hocus Pocus, you got that Hubie Halloween that Adam Sandler did, and it's like, yeah, granted. Some of them are going to be good and some of them are going to be great and some of them are going to be crappy, but even the crappy ones still give revenue and stuff like that to this town, to the town. I mean, it's cool. And like, Salem, like when we were there, they were all about it, like, hey man, this is where, obviously everybody knows where that's Hocus Pocus was filmed, but
Yep.
they were all about, plugging that Hubie Halloween was just recently there. So it was like, it's cool. I like that. I like using like those real locations and stuff like that too for these kind of movies. But yeah, but overall, I think it's a great movie overall. And like I said, to me, I mean, I agree. I think 7.5 is definitely a good spot for where it's at. Because like I said, I think it's. I mean, it's which is not as weird. And yes, you got that weird ending of Rob Zombie's movie, but I think it's just overall, I just like the storyline and just the whole presentation of Rob Zombie's visuals, just a slightly big better than The Witch, like you said. So I definitely give it a 7.5.
Absolutely, man. And it is one of those cool things. I mean, and this was a fun showdown to talk about, bro. I just thought it was really cool because again, it's also, it gives me the feels as well that, because you and I always try to pair things up proper for the Fangs and the Infernos. Like we want these showdowns to make sense. But this was definitely a fun one because you've got that old New England witch trial type movie against like this other like modern day witch, like you put it, shot and delivered in the town that I'm from is just kind of cool and like awesome. So it was like, oh man, this occult one is going to be so fun when we get to talk about that. And so that was a whole lot of fun for us to put together this one. But that's the way it's going to be, Fangs and Infernos. It is a fatality. Victory goes to the vampire on this one as a 7.5 for Lords of Salem takes out a 7.0 for the witch. That's the way it's going to be. And we are chalking it up on the obituaries. Horns up. Fangs out.
Devil, my friend, I think we should have a little quick conversation about everybody's respectful celestial abodes, where it be my little coffin, where I lay my head at night, or at times that you feel that you just want to go back down to make sure that hell's not getting out of whack while you are away. Let's talk about it. Vampire and Devil's newest partnership in Twisted Vines, our dear friends, Chris and Sarah and Cadaver.
Oh yeah, you like scary stuff, you like horror decor, come and check out Twisted Vines. They make all the kind of cool shit, all for your house, all kinds of scary shit. They love it. You like to bring back the horror, you want to scare your neighbors, you want to conjure up a friend to talk to, you want to conjure up somebody bad, you want to do some bad stuff to them, you go to Twisted Vines and get some of their merch.
Absolutely, for sure. Everything is completely handmade by them. So if you need a little friend, maybe a round set abode, maybe you want to conduct a little evil towards a friend that was a friend, maybe no longer a friend. They have voodoo dolls they can do for you to allow for such activities. But you know how much we love our Ouija boards, my friend, and they make all of those by hand. They took care of your beloved vampire with a nice Nosferatu board, but the devil, he happens to be a Munsters fan. And not only do they do boards as traditional rectangles, but they can put a little bit of coffin flair in them.
Oh yeah, look at that coffin shape Munster board. Yeah, you wanna conjure up Mr. Herman? You wanna ask him how Pet Cemetery was? You can do it on this board. Oh yeah.
Absolutely, my friend. So again, thank you so much to Twisted Vines for partnering with the Vampire and Devil podcast, and make sure that you Fangs and Infernos are checking them out on their Facebook page, on their Instagram pages, and making sure that you are checking them out as they move around the country, showing their craft off at all of the various horror cons and oddities expos that they love to do. So absolutely, my friend, of course, man, horns up, fangs out for our friends at Twisted Vines.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Fangs. Sometimes we all get a little bit hungry, and it's important to feed those appetites. So let's talk a little bit about Appetite for Sin on this edition of Coffin Nails from 2024. This is actually a very cool Coffin Nails for me to talk about. I actually happen to be a backer of this project. It was a Kickstart that came out a couple of years ago. Some friends of mine were involved in the project. They ended up not staying with the project, but that's all right. But this is overall a very, very cool movie. It's actually got an amazing cast. So it's got Linnea Quigley from Return of the Living Dead. It's got Ari Lehman, the first Jason, the original Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th. It's got Eileen Dietz from The Exorcist. It's got Robert Mukes from House of a Thousand Corpses. Very, very cool cast. So basically you've got like Sarah, who's an undercover FBI agent who actually is also a real life vampire, you know, and she's doing her vampire things. She also has like a rival who's another female vampire. And basically, as they're doing their typical vampire things, you know, with their kind of like nightclub, kind of cult speakeasy place that they're always hanging out at. But then, of course, they're taking people out one by one in typical vampire fashion. The funny thing is, you've got Jeffrey, who is the vampire hunter who's going after all of these people, or he's just trying to rid the world of all vampires. You know, he ends up getting locked up because he's the one who ends up getting accused of all these murders. And the thing I really like about the movie is it's got a cool build, it's got a good story arc, and it's got a very cool twist ending on it that revolves around family. Long story short, Jeff does get exonerated of, you know, the murders, but I'll leave it up to you guys to watch this movie to see exactly why he's quote-unquote acquitted of these charges. And I don't think it worked out quite in his favor. So anyway, I really enjoyed this movie. It's definitely a movie I can see myself watching, you know, regularly. I think it's cool. I think the acting was solid. I really liked the use of effects. The blood splatter was proper, and it actually made sense, which I really, really liked about it. So I'm going to give this one upwards. It's definitely a quality vampire movie. I'm going to give this one a 7.5 on Coffin Nails, and I hope you guys check it out and enjoy it. So we got Appetite for Sin from 2024.
Devil, my friend. Fashion. Things to wear. Possibly faces covered, but more importantly, covering up the bodies. Merch. We have that now. We are very, very excited to announce that Vampire and the Devil have partnered with our friends at Rockin' Horror Apparel. They are now taking care of the actual merch, the exclusive merch for the Vampire and Devil podcast, modeled by our very sexy devil right here.
Oh, yeah.
But we have all kinds of goodies to share with you.
Got the hoodies, we got some shirts, we got some tanks coming up, we got some booty shorts, we got all the stuff you want to wear from the Vampire and Devil podcast, thanks to Rockin' Horror.
Horns up, fangs out.
Welcome as we continue our deaths of those who died in December. We honor these: Walt Disney, Mr. Disney himself, Brittany Murphy, Princess and all-around badass Carrie Fisher, and of course, the comedy legend Chris Farley, who lives in a van down by the river. All these souls lost but never forgotten.
Ghouls and fangs. Vampire and the Devil here. We got a little question for you. Devil, there's kind of a triangle, a three-headed monster per se, when it comes to Baltimore, that I don't think people necessarily realize. We've got Edgar Allan Poe. We've got John Waters. But what else do we have?
We got the Ouija boards, oh yeah.
Absolutely. Starting in Baltimore way back in the day, a lot of people are unfamiliar with William Fuld and Elijah Bond, who patented, and the birth of the Ouija board was right here in Baltimore. Devil and Vampire coming at you from
the Witchboard Museum of Baltimore, courtesy of our friend John Kozik, who invited us out to check it out and shoot a little conversation action to let you guys all know. Of course, you've seen on our socials that we have partnered with both museums, and we couldn't be more appreciative to John for that opportunity. So whenever you're here in Baltimore, of course, right attached to the Bazaar Oddity Shop off of the Avenue, you have Witchboard Museum Baltimore. And when you're in Witch City, USA, up in Salem, Massachusetts, that's when you get to visit the Salem Witchboard Museum.
Oh yeah, if you want to see some cool stuff, see some cool boards, get some cool history, go see our boy John. Man, that guy is really awesome, man. That dude knows his boards, he knows his history. He's about preserving the society of witch boards and the talking boards and all that goodness. And you know, we love it. We love the fact that, you know, they were going to bring in this museum here in Baltimore, so all the Baltimore fans or all your East Coast fans or maybe not as far away, going up to Salem, come out to Baltimore and check it out, you know what I mean? Because there's some cool stuff in this museum, and you got to check it out because the devil and the vampire said so.
That is facts right there, my friend. Again, absolutely attached to the Bazaar Oddities Shop in the Avenue in Hamden for the Baltimore established Witchboard Museum, or off of Essex Street in Salem, Massachusetts for the Salem Witchboard Museum. Horns up, fangs out.